Yay. It's Friday. It's Friday, guys. And momentum abounds. You know, I was just talking with my team this morning, and Daniel on my team was like, it just seems like the sprints, like momentum kicks off faster and faster each time. I was like, I know. And it's because it's more than just myself sprinting now. Like I said, because you guys are alongside of me and we're sprinting together, we get even more momentum faster. He's like, yeah, it's just incredible. I can't believe how much activity has kicked up in even just the last 72 hours. It's so cool. And I just love to see it happen every time because it's so predictable. You know, I guess there's a science and an art to it. The art part is that we get to bring our personality pieces to the game every time and we get to decide what our sprint targets are. And they are different every time because we have different seasons, right? Like, and hopefully we're knocking some of these things out. And so we don't have the same targets time after time. even though some of them, like we talked about earlier in the week, might carry over for many sprints to come. For anybody who hasn't logged in here this week, welcome. I'm Teresa Bassett. I've been our guide for the JumpStart Sales Challenge for fall of 2024. And this is something that we do twice a year, spring and fall. And it's important to me. I've come to realize, I think there was one fall last year we skipped in the process, and I just didn't feel like I had all my ducks in a row. And what I realized by this year is that it doesn't really matter if I have all my ducks in a row. Imperfect action is okay. But the process of being ready, of just showing up and doing it, is actually what gets me ready, if that makes sense. And so it's not going to be perfect, but I think that it has been perfect. This week has been amazing. I have gotten so much great feedback. Thank you from, Chad and Beth and Nina and Renee and Lynn and Lillian and Daniel and, all of the people who have reached out to me with feedback. And I'm really glad you guys are sprinting. Here's the thing. This isn't about me. Of course, it's about you. And it's about the business and the life of your dreams at the other end of your concerted energy and focus towards up leveling your life and business. You can do anything you put your mind to. The momentum is available to you. So the art part is that you bring your personality pieces to the table every time, the season of life that you're in. The science part, though, is super interesting to me because if you do a science experiment, if you mix oxygen and hydrogen in the right combination, you're going to get water. It's a formula. And honestly, this momentum is also very formulaic. And that's why I wrote the book, Up Level, because I learned that there were certain pieces that if I did them in the right order, if I did them in the same order, that I would get predictable results. And I'm all about some systems. The people on my team know, like, systems thinking drives my life because I found that I can do more with less if I have systems. I can make the things that become routine more enjoyable. And if I know predictably every year, Christmas gift season is coming and I create a system around it, then I get to enjoy it even more because I've created a system around it. These sprints have become formulaic for me, even though I bring the art part and the personality piece to the table, there's a formula to it. And that's why we start with motion. And then the second day we tackle mindset and the mental game. I highly encourage you to go back and watch the replays if you haven't. And don't just watch the replays, guys, do the homework. There is a sprint workbook. There's a lot of exercises in there that we didn't even talk about. But like for the second day, we talked about old me versus new me, right? Like, how do you want to show up? Okay, maybe we come to the table with all these hangups and bang-ups and all this baggage, but what are we going to do with it? Right? What is this sprint? What is this opportunity? What is this day about right in front of us? And I was reminded of this really powerfully because in the last 2 weeks, something's caught my attention in terms of momentum. And that's why I'm wearing my Detroit Tigers hat today because, of course, I'm from Detroit. Detroit sports has been super fun to watch my entire life. I actually was in Detroit Tigers Stadium for one of the 1984 pennant series games. Of course, I was a young, how old was I? I was born in 71, so I was 13. And of course, the 1984 Tigers, we had, Alan Trammell, we had Petrie, we had Morris, we had, Lou Whitaker was my favorite shortstop. And that team had some mojo. Right. And because they had this chemistry and these players, I'm not even like the hugest baseball fan on the planet, but the Tigers, yes. And do I remember their names? Yes, because it was a special thing that came together in 1984 and it produced a pennant win, which the Tigers hadn't experienced. Well, kind of some of the same stuff is going on right now And in the last couple weeks, of course, I kind of loosely always follow the Tigers, and definitely follow the Lions as well. And Detroit sports is such a good example of rebounding, which is again the subject of my first book, coming back from failures and setbacks. The Detroit Lions has been, they've been one of the most challenged in the win department teams, for years and years, 30 years. And Dan Campbell, in terms of leadership of that team, is turning that team around. And of course, they were in the playoffs last year for the Super Bowl, which was super exciting. The Tigers this year are 2 games out of the playoffs. So they have a potential of making it into the playoffs. And very similar thing has happened. AJ Hinch, the manager of the team, of course, it starts with leadership. Well, your sprint starts with leadership too, right? That's motion, that's mindset, that's mojo, right? That's you taking the reins of leadership over your own energy, your own targets, your own momentum, the results you want to see showing up 90 days from now and beyond, right? That momentum starts with you self-leading yourself into a process by which you can create momentum. So I think the leadership lesson here holds. But in an interview recently, what they said about what the manager is doing for the team is they said, he's not so focused on what is possible with the playoff wins, but he's really dialed into each and every game, each and every play. And my husband Kelly and I were talking about this morning, and I said, I think we're pretty good at that on our team. Really focusing in on every conversation, every meeting, every presentation, every opportunity. But the lesson is not lost on me that you can't lose that focus on blocking and tackling, wrong sport. But because those piece by piece wins end up creating the momentum, right? It's one step and then another step and then another step and another step, which is why we get started with 20 minutes a day and we have to keep it going, which, by the way, I totally needed to turn up my find my physical fuel, and I am totally committed to doing that. I'm really getting into the blocking and tackling on my own physical target this weekend, and cruising into that training plan that I talked about, because I've recognized that part of the formula is continuous radical responsibility for the results that I want to see. And that means I have to continue to self-lead, not just start out with the right intention in mind, but I have to follow through. And that's what AJ Hinch is helping the Tigers do. And that's resulting in an enormous opportunity for the team. You have the same opportunity for your team. You have the same opportunity for your family, for you, yourself, and by continuing not just to start out with the right intention in mind, but following through every day. It's super exciting. And I love to see many of you step up to the plate and grab the reins on that and really take responsibility for the results that you want to see, because it is an incredible gift and privilege. So I've had so much fun this week. We are going to keep the momentum kicked off. I love that story of, this team manager coming in and creating, and they said, well, I don't know what it is, if we have just mojo, if we have momentum, or if it's magic. And I thought, wow, there you go. There's maybe a future sprint, a JumpStart challenge word, right? Another M word we didn't use yet. Magic. Is momentum magic? It is a little bit magic, because we have the art and science coming together. And the synergy is that, by taking one step and then another step and then another step and then another step and creating this wave of momentum, something else happens in the ether. And we literally become a force of nature. We become a vortex of activity. And this is what Daniel and I were talking about this morning. Like, there's something almost supernatural, magical that happens that gets added on top. and it's like the sprinkles on the cupcake that make it really pretty. But there's some energetic activation that happens. And I'm seeing it on my team already, and I'm seeing it in myself. And I hope that you take the steps, because there's no replacement for the process. If you want to activate, if you want to get the results, if you want to get the momentum, you got to take the steps. So don't skip the replays. Don't skip the homework. Do the work, guys. Get your head in the game. Set out your targets for the sprint and make your milestone markers in your calendar, right? October 23rd, November 23rd, December 23rd. It's not a mystery when those days are. And then ask yourself, what are you going to do to reward yourself at the end of those 30-day legs? What are you going to do for yourself? Right? What are you going to do to pat yourself on the back for momentum? And I want to, ask yourself a different set of questions too. Today's homework, I do feel very celebratory because I feel like it's just been an amazing week. And I do feel like you've shared so many small wins along the path with me, and I feel encouraged by that. And I also feel encouraged by what I see happening right in front of me, right? And so I know without a shadow of a doubt that this momentum is just going to spill over into ways I can only begin to imagine. And that is super exciting. And that makes me feel like celebrating. And I am going to celebrate today. But I also want you to go to the flip side of that coin for a minute and look into the next 90 days and ask yourself, what could pose a threat to your momentum? What could be a distraction? What could knock you off your focus? Maybe it's that you need a little more fire in your belly to get going. Like maybe the threat is that you might never start. Well, that's real. And I would bet that there's a lot of people out there asking, should I? Should I believe that this is even possible? Should I do any of this work? Well, it's true. You don't have to. I mean, it is completely optional. But again, this isn't about me and something I want you to accomplish. This is about the things you want to accomplish. You showed up for this challenge because you wanted to jumpstart your own sales, because you wanted to jumpstart your momentum towards the life and business of your dreams. I think that's important and worthy target, and it is possible. So I hope that the threat, the distraction, or the lack of focus at the front end doesn't stop you before you ever get started. Every day is a fresh chance to start again. And so long obedience in the same direction. If you have a wobbly day, just get up the next day and start over, right? Or continue the path, I should say, not necessarily start over. But you got to do the homework up front, and you got to decide what the targets are. Because again, if you don't do that, if you don't know what your physical target is, if you don't know what your financial target is, if you don't know what your other target is, then it's too fuzzy. And we talked on day 2 and 3 in particular about specificity, right? The specificity is so, so, so important. And then I highly urge you with those specific targets in mind to create an accountability anchor. Set a date on your calendar, set up for, line up an event, share it with someone else, share it with me. If you want an accountability partner, although I don't know, Tiffany, I know you were out there watching at one point. Tiffany shared some targets and goals with me over the years that we've known each other. And now she knows that, she has to be careful what she shares, because I am going to follow up with her. I am going to ask. I am going to hold her accountable and capable, because honestly, when you do that, when you loop somebody else into your process and then they get to show up for you, so that you'll show up for yourself. It's so easy for us to let ourselves down. It's so easy for us to let ourselves off the hook. But what are we really doing? When we do that, I think on some level we're not being honest, because we'll allow ourselves to say, oh, I really want this. But then when we get discouraged, unfocused, distracted, or we never get going, we're also saying, I'm not sure that I really want that. I'm not sure that I really can do it. And so on some level, there's a disconnect. There's a lack of integrity Either we're not being honest about really wanting it. Maybe the goal or the target really doesn't come from a heart space, like we talked about. Maybe it doesn't have enough resonance. And so that's important to ask, right? Because maybe you just pick something that was like, yeah, I really want a BMW to show up in my driveway. And it's like, well, why? I don't know. Because isn't it nice to have a BMW? I don't know. That's not a target. That's not the kind of target I'm talking about, right? I'm talking about something that really matters to you. So if it's a sales target, what is in it for you personally, professionally? Why does it matter to you? Right? And that's the kind of goal that's going to have resonance. That's the kind of goal that's going to get you up in the morning. That's the kind of target that's going to help you overcome speed bumps and wall kicking moments. Right? But if it doesn't have enough pull, if it doesn't have enough resonance in here, then you're just going to give up. Or, like we said, maybe never get started really because you just don't really care enough. It's okay to reevaluate that. It's actually a sign. If you keep letting yourself off the hook for something, it might be that your target just really doesn't matter enough to you. That's okay because it gets to be whatever you want it to be. I mean, not everybody wants to participate in a triathlon. It doesn't matter to them. And so, that's why you can't set your targets based on what you think other people would set or for you. It can't be just logical. It has to mean something. It has to be something you care about. And I can't say enough about that. So if you keep letting yourself off the hook or you keep letting yourself get distracted, maybe there's something to reevaluate there. Or maybe you're just not planning well enough. Maybe, this is where I wanted this question to go. It's like, ask yourself, well, what could be a potential distraction? Like for me, next week I'm supposed to, so I have this massive target that I identified in the last, well, it's been something that's been tugging at my heartstrings really since my entire life. And being that I'm from the Detroit area, we've spent a week every summer up in northern Michigan for years and years. Not every single summer that I've been able to make it, but a lot of summers for 35 years. And I just absolutely love northern Michigan. And we recently identified that we'd like to spend more time there and that we'd like to have kind of a dual residence lifestyle. And so we started putting the wheels in motion towards that goal. And I've already had some wall kicking moments. I've already had some massive speed bumps. I've already had some massive disappointments on the road to making this happen. But one of the things is about to take shape, and that is I'm moving into a new house next week. Well, it could be next week. It might be the week after. I don't know. But moving can be a massive distraction, right? It's on the list of the top 3 stressors in a person's life. I wouldn't say that it's that for me anymore because I've moved so many darn times that it's like, it's easy on a lot of levels. When push comes to shove, I'm always reminded how much darn work it really is. But that being said, in terms of moving in the middle of a sprint, I've done it before and it's okay. I came out intact, right? But I had to plan for the amount of energetic output that was going to take. And I had to see it for what it is. It's like, oh, okay, well, maybe on those days when I'm actually physically moving or working with my movers, maybe I'm not going to get all of my exercise in for that day. Maybe the exercise looks a little bit different, but that doesn't mean I don't lose, that I don't keep my physical target in mind. It means that I have to look at these things coming up, right? I have to look at Thanksgiving, for example. I have a big corporate event coming up. We're on the eve, Christmas. We're going to be preparing for the holiday season at the end of this sprint. So I have to look at these things from a proactive standpoint, and I have to recognize how I want to show up in response to those things, right? I have to look at, it's kind of like when you are meal planning or if you're starting a new nutrition plan and you have to go, oh yeah, I'm going out to dinner with my family next week. Well, maybe I should pre-plan what I'm going to order or how I'm going to handle that so that it's in alignment with the nutrition plan that I have in place. It helps tremendously if we make some of those decisions ahead of time and we plan for them. as opposed to just getting in the moment and being like, oh, we get a case of the, oh, screw it. Well, I'm out to dinner. I might as well just eat whatever I want. We can feel very blindsided by the distraction, by the thing that is apparently pulling us away from our sprint targets. I want to challenge you with that, though, because quite the opposite can actually happen if you think about it in advance and you identify those things that could be potential distractions or deterrents to your momentum, and you double down on your commitment to plan for those things or be proactive. Maybe, I already know that I'm going to have some disappointments. I know that because I set out a lot of targets and goals for myself, and I don't hit them every time, right? And I have to decide ahead of time how I'm going to handle disappointments. You guys, create a mental framework for handling some of those things. Don't expect the path to be covered with rose petals. It's not going to be. You're going to hit speed bumps and wall kicking moments. Decide in advance how you're going to handle them. I find that the mental framework that I have around that helps me tremendously in maintaining momentum, because I'm not expecting it to be super easy and just like a lay down. One. And so my expectation and reality there's not a huge disconnect. So that's one really good mental framework that helps me. And then two, I can pre-craft a series of responses. I can decide how I'm going to handle it when it comes up. And sometimes, I need a minute to grieve, maybe that I'm disappointed that I'm not getting my way in this situation, or that I'm hitting this obstacle or challenge. But the other thing it gives me an opportunity to do is to decide if these targets really matter. How important is it to me? And actually, these challenges can actually work to double down on your clarity and your commitment to what the sprint targets are. It can actually serve to be a catalyst to your momentum instead of a challenge to your momentum. Does this make sense to anybody? Yes or yes? I think that it is, it's super cool, actually. Well, here you go. It just started pouring outside a few minutes ago. We're in the middle of a hurricane, the outer bands of Helene, and my peers, my team's family. I mean, we've got people all throughout the Southeast, and my heart goes out to them. I hope everybody stays safe, and I'm praying for everybody's safety. But I knew in advance that we were going to be in the middle of this when I came into the office today. It's just a small example, but it's so appropriate, right? We can be in the middle of the storm and we can maintain our momentum. We can be in the middle of life storms and we can say, well, I don't know how I'm going to get through this challenge, but you know what? I'm going to take a beat. I'm going to give myself some breathing space, and I'm going to let today pass. And then in the morning, I'm going to wake up. I'm going to trust that I'm going to wake up with some different insights, some different ideas, a different approach, a different perspective. I really want to challenge you when you hit wall kicking moments, disappointments, challenges, to not, challenge yourself not to react to those things, but to decide in advance how to respond to those things. And then a lot of times those are moments when we go to our default, right? And then back to that growth mindset. If you're the kind of person that always reacts to stuff and you're just like, and you just, it instantly inflames you, well, maybe you have an opportunity in that growth mindset piece to choose a different way. Maybe you get to choose a non-reactionary way, and maybe you get to choose to respond instead. And if you don't know how to respond to situations, it's okay. Sometimes I don't know how to respond either. And sometimes you have to take a beat. You have to take a step back and you just have to go, okay, I'm not sure what this situation requires from me, but I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to let this day pass, because this day is just too much for me. And then I'm going to trust that when I wake up in the morning, I'm going to have a different insight or idea. And I can't tell you guys how many times that simple approach has changed so much for me in terms of momentum, because I don't get thrown off my game as easily. I may get thrown off momentarily, but I don't get thrown off for days and weeks and months. I may get thrown off for a few hours or even overnight or maybe even a couple days, but it doesn't turn into a couple weeks. And by keeping that perspective, by framing challenges in that way, it helps me be super solution oriented, and it helps me have better communication skills, right? Because I don't have a tendency to react to other people and to situations and to lash out in frustration or irritation or expect somebody to provide me with a solution. It keeps me in a really resourceful state. And so I'm not perfect at it, but it's something that I continue to practice. And I think it has a lot to do with my momentum, right? I am a force of nature during these sprints. And anyone around me in my life will tell you that it's not a force of nature like I'm going to plow you over like a hurricane. It's a force of nature like I'm focused. If it's up to me, it will be. And if it's to be, it's up to me. Right? And I'm going to do what I can. I'm going to play 100% and I'm going to leave it all out on the road, right? And I'm going to play every one of these legs out 100% to the 30th day. And it doesn't mean I'm going to have days that aren't fuzzy or wobbly, but I'm going to play 100% through the end of the sprint because I know without a shadow of a doubt, because of that formula, that I'm going to see tremendous results not only during this 90 days, but long after the 90 days. So I'm excited for you in that. I will say that if you pop up and post and participate, I do have a $100 bonus for someone that shares their story of momentum this week or shares their targets. The first person to post a video about that and what this week has meant to them and their process, they're going to get $100. Instead of doing a lot of different gift cards and smaller things, I decided to kind of group it together on this Friday. And I know it's a busy day. I know we're in the middle of a hurricane. There's all kinds of things going on. But I know that many of you are getting momentum. And so I would love it if you would share. So there are some bonuses available to that. You guys, it has been a super privilege and a true gift to share this week with you. I am committed to seeing this sprint all the way through. I will make sure that you have the resources that you need, the replays. The replays will be staying up for about 30 days, I think, depending on what the technology gods allow us to do on these platforms. But I think that that's about 30 days, and I'll keep them up. But I want to encourage you to, go check out my book, Up Level, on Amazon. It is an easy read. It's a great format. You'll get some benefit in terms of the sprint primer. There's also a download sprint primer. Your workbook is posted in the social channels for the JumpStart Challenge itself. There is a QR code in the book as well. You can download a sprint primer. There's all kinds of resources available to you here. And what I encourage you to do is don't just dabble, dive in, start learning the rhythm, the pace of these sprints, because it'll become part of your DNA. Really, it'll just start becoming part of your working rhythm. And I think the beautiful thing that's available in here is that it gives you periods of rest. And I think those periods of rest are as important as these sprints. In fact, that's a future book. I'm actually writing a book about rest. I'm writing another book called Love Changes Everything, about how really doubling down to your commitment to your clients and your business and your team from that heart space, how that changes everything in business. And then there's a sales masterclass that's going to come out of all of this as well. And so that's in the works. I'm excited because for me, this is a lifelong journey that spills over onto the shores in lots of different formats, lots of different classes, books, resources. But it's a thing that's not letting go of me. It's not going to let go of me. I share these things with you from a place of just truly caring. And I see a lot of people that don't have momentum. I see a lot of people in drift. I see a lot of people that have muddy, fuzzy goals. I see a lot of people who need clarity. They need commitment. They need to know where they're going, right? And they just feel like they're just letting life's winds blow them this way and blow them that way. And I know that there's something else available. And so that's why I share these things, not just because it works for me, but because I would love for you to experience that momentum. I would love for you to hit your targets. I would love for you to be the next Detroit Tigers team, right? With your own mojo and momentum and your own magic. I think that that is, I don't know, it's super cool. So thank you so much for letting me be your guide on this journey and jump off this challenge together. Onward and upward, guys. As someone famous once said, I I love the kickoff to new things. I love the curiosity of Christmas morning feeling of like, what's it going to be? You guys, momentum abounds. I'm excited. I'm curious. I can't wait to see what comes out of it. You guys have a super Friday. Have a wonderful day and a great weekend ahead. Stay safe in the middle of the storms. Stay dry. I encourage you to give where giving is possible, volunteer where volunteering is possible. We're in it together, and we all need each other on this journey. And thank you. Have a great day.